I've since come across, I can't say all, but many New Age teachers, met some of them, worked with some of them, seen what they teach, what they've done with their lives and so on, and there is nobody at all in his caliber or category. He didn't say that. He was a very humble man, but it's kind of obvious. But I didn't realise, this is the key point, just how unique Dr. King is and was. Then I found out later more about, because I'm working on his biography with Brian Keane, and I've looked into his background in some depth, and he was unique from day one. He really took up yoga straight after the war, but he was already on the spiritual quest before the war. Hence he was a conscientious objector for spiritual reasons only, because he was a born fighter by instinct, really. He turned to yoga completely, and again that's unique. He had to do a job. He had to live in London, and he was still doing 8 hours of yoga practice a day for 10 years. And during those 10 years, he didn't have anybody that he knew who could really advise or help, or who was in his league. There was never anybody in his league, actually, in his whole life that he was able to mix around with. But he had this single-minded, total focus on that. And when he did it, he went all the way. And all the way is known as samadhi. And he attained samadhi, the highest, deepest states of meditation, beyond the horizon of anything I've done, obviously, or that's on this album. But this album is, if you like, points towards it. It's like a lighthouse, or it's signalling what's ahead. And so he was totally the role model, completely the role model, and he was totally focused on that inner journey, and he was having outstanding experiences of every kind, every type of psychic experience, mediumistic, healing. He was gaining the physical powers as well as the psychic powers, a whole variety of them. I mean, for example, I know he had a Kundalini rise, which is the Kundalini is the mystic force within, which is the goal really of mystics. Some people have never heard of Kundalini, but they know there's a dormant power within. So you've had Western mystics who weren't using the word Kundalini, but were having a rise of this mystic force within their being. And he attained a very, very high level indeed of this. I imagine it would be about the 1950s. And it was so intense that the only way he could work it off and start to bring it under control was to run. He ran certainly from Waterloo to Maida Vale in London. If anyone knows London, that's quite a run. And he spent hours then running around a park and so on, just to work this out. And just to give you one illustration, they used to have, in those days, telephone boxes, and they were big, robust little booths really, but they had very strong doors on it with very firm hinges, and he had to call his mother, and he just pulled the door right off the phone booth. With so much physical strength did he have, and he had to control this, and he had to do it through tremendous balance. I mean, and he had many powers of invisibility, powers of levitation, which was witnessed by his niece. Physical levitation, I don't mean out of body, which he had as well. Now these things were going on as well as his mediumistic experiences and the healing work that he was doing, and other clairvoyant experiences. He could meet people, he told me, and he would know what they were going to do, exactly what they thought, and he didn't want those abilities. He had to learn to switch them off because it didn't help him. This is the thing that is really impressive to me. It's one thing to start to tap certain powers, it's another thing to have them totally under control. And he had always, and I then got to know him, I could see at first hand, at close quarters, that he was absolutely and totally the real thing. He absolutely lived it 24 hours a day, and more than one even knew. I mean, I would say he was a constant source of enigma and speculation among his closest friends and followers and associates, because he always he had to keep some of his cards close to his chest. But in terms of meditation, once he found his mission in life, which was to be primary terrestrial mental channel and to start the Aetherius Society and all that went with that, and all that went with that in the higher realms and even the lower ones. Once he started on that, his years of focus on meditation were behind him, but he still drew on it, and he used it, and he used it in service. He did practice prayer. I mean, for example, he prayed for world peace, and he understood prayer. I mean, I think he has said that he kind of knew how to pray as a child. No one had to teach him. And the method of prayer that he has taught, which is we call dynamic prayer, that's used, for example, when we do the 12 blessings, which people take as read, actually was a tremendous innovation. And that's just because he knew it. He wasn't given that by another source. He knew that. And from what I can glean, he was doing that. You know, he was praying for weather condition stabilization and so on before the Aetherius Society, or before he was contacted by the cosmic masters. There are several things that made him unique as a master. One is he was an absolute total expert on karma. Even as compared to other great masters who've come to Earth. He understood karma was, if you like, his thing. He really knew it. Everything he did was what he would call a karmic manipulation, above all else.